Och då är första delen av kungafamiljen på väg in. Det är prins Carl Philip, prinsessan Sofia samt prinsessan Madeleine och herr Christopher O'Neill. Och de är då flankerade av talman Andreas Norlén och riksmarskalk Fredrik Wersäll, chef för de kungliga hovstaterna. Då är kungafamiljen på plats och vi har börjat på riktigt. Och vi väntar nu på pristagarna. Och som vanligt så gör de entré till toner av Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart. Marsch i D-dur, Kungliga Filharmonikern under ledning av dirigent Johannes Gustafsson. Då är det dags för vår första talare, Astrid Söderberg Widding.
Your Majesties, Your Royal Highnesses, esteemed Nobel Prize laureates, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the Nobel Foundation, it is my great honor and pleasure to welcome you all to the 2024 Nobel Prize Award ceremony. In particular, I wish to welcome the Nobel Prize laureates, their families and friends. Today in Oslo, the Nobel Peace Prize was awarded to Nihon Hidankyo, also known as Hibakusha, and I quote, for its efforts to achieve a world free of nuclear weapons, and for demonstrating through witness testimony that nuclear weapons must never be used again, end of quote. This Japanese grassroots movement, survivors of the atomic bombs in Hiroshima and Nagasaki, has for almost 80 years argued the necessity of an international nuclear taboo. During decades, nuclear arms were considered the main threat to humankind. But in spite of these witnesses reminding us, and because of trust in arms treaties and international developments, this almost fell into oblivion. Today, as nuclear threats are being expressed anew in connection with wars and conflicts involving nuclear powers, the Nobel Peace Prize takes on an existential dimension. Earlier this year, a number of Nobel Prize laureates signed the Mainau Declaration 2024 on nuclear weapons, urging all nations to protect human civilization by ensuring that nuclear arms never be used again. The atomic bomb also recalls that basic research put into practice is not only for good. Still, however, it is through free fundamental research that science must continue to explore and expand the frontiers of human knowledge, laying the foundation for future applications and development. The scientific breakthroughs awarded this year in science and medicine, the Physics Prize for using dynamical systems to understand mechanisms of memory and laying the foundations for artificial intelligence, the Chemistry Prize for using the latter for predicting protein structures and for computational design of proteins, and the prize in Physiology of Medicine for the discovery of an essential complementary process for how identical genetic information leads to different cells, have already led to groundbreaking applications for the greatest benefit of humankind. The unimaginable consequences that genetic technologies and artificial intelligence may perhaps introduce can only be managed in trustful, rule-based international collaboration. The Literature Prize this year, awarded to a profound exploration of human vulnerability against the backdrop of historical trauma, where the abyss is always as close as is the longing for transformation, sheds light upon the fragile condition of humankind. And finally, the prize in economic sciences for quantitatively assessing the importance of a country's institutions for its prosperity can be considered in the present context of ongoing autocratization with faltering democracies. Facing a number of interconnected challenges, including climate change and geopolitical tensions, we indeed live in times of volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. The insightful testament of Alfred Nobel, which has gathered us here, is still of highest relevance. The scientific prizes award fundamental research. Still, all the awards, in their diversity, also address the global challenges of today. The laureates have paved the way. Science, literature, and peace offer different paths to tackle today's wicked problems. But they all remind us that it is not blind destiny that decides on our future as humanity. This also offers hope. It lies in our hands to change the world.
Astrid Söderberg Widing, alltså ordförande i Nobelstiftelsen. Nu blir det musik. Tannhäuser av Richard Wagner. Ingela Brindberg, sopran. Nu handlar det om fysikpriset, Ellen Moons, Nobelkommittén för
Your
fysik.
Majesties, Your Royal Highnesses, esteemed Nobel Prize laureates, ladies and gentlemen. As you arrived here today, you recognized some faces instantly, and names came to you in a flash. Other names may have slipped your mind, and perhaps you felt a twinge of frustration, scanning your memory for the circumstances of the past encounters that just won't come into focus. Memory association works as a scaffold to understand new information. With every thought, the billions of neurons in our brain develop stronger connections. In 1949, the Canadian psychologist Donald Hebb said, "Neurons that fire together, wire together," to describe the mechanism of learning. This year's Nobel Prize laureates in physics, John Hopfield and Geoffrey Hinton, were inspired by the network of neurons in the human brain. They developed artificial neural networks, which are fundamental for machine learning, allowing computers to learn without explicit programming. In 1982, John Hopfield discovered that the physics describing how atomic magnetic moments align in solids, giving them magnetic properties, can also be used to describe the interactions between neurons in our brains. He developed a dynamical model for the associative memory based on networks of binary nodes, where nodes were assigned values determined by the weighted sum over all nodes. Like a ball rolling down a hill, the dynamics drive the system into the valleys of the energy landscape, where it relaxes. In these valleys, memories are located as stationary states. So this is where you will find the name of the acquaintance you were searching for in your memory landscape. As a theoretical physicist with deep roots in solid-state physics and a passion for complex processes in biophysics and neuroscience, John Hopfield's achievements are a testimony to the power of interdisciplinary thinking. Geoffrey Hinton extended Hopfield's model using ideas from statistical physics. The invention is called the Boltzmann machine, named after the Austrian physicist Ludwig Boltzmann. It contains multiple layers of nodes, and is trained using given sets of patterns. Once trained, the network can generate new patterns that resemble those in the learned set. Geoffrey Hinton is a leading figure in the development of efficient learning algorithms. He pioneered the efforts to establish deep and dense neural networks. Such networks are effective in sorting and interpreting large amounts of data, and self-improve based on the accuracy of the result. Today, artificial neural networks are powerful tools in research fields spanning physics, chemistry, and medicine, as well as in daily life. While they can aid humans in delivering fast answers, it is our collective responsibility to make sure that they are used in a safe and ethical way. Professor John Hopfield and Professor Geoffrey Hinton, you have been awarded the 2024 Nobel Prize in Physics for foundational discoveries and inventions that enable machine learning with artificial neural networks. It is an honor and a privilege to convey to you, on behalf of the Royal Swedish Academy of Sciences, our warmest congratulations. I now ask you to step forward to receive the Nobel Prizes, your Nobel Prizes, from the hands of His Majesty the King.
Först ut då John Hopfield, 91 år, äldst av pristagarna i år. Född i Chicago, både mamma och pappa var fysiker. Och som vi hörde i Ellen Moons tal, det som var då la grunden för hans forskning, det var gåtan: hur känner vår hjärna igen våra nära och kära? Går det att överföra till en dator? Och på den vägen är det. Dags då för Geoffrey Hinton. En av få pristagare som ångrar delar av sitt livsverk, och han varnar för AI om människan inte kan kontrollera tekniken.
Your Majesties, Your Royal Highnesses, esteemed Nobel Prize laureates, ladies and gentlemen. Proteins are the macromolecules that enable the chemistry of life. They catalyze all the needed chemical reactions. They also function as signaling molecules, receptors, pumps, antibodies, and building blocks of different tissues. So their diversity is truly remarkable. And to understand how proteins work, you need to know what they look like. So proteins are basically polymers made up from an alphabet of 20 amino acids. And these can be combined in endless ways. A typical protein may contain maybe a few hundred amino acids and thousands of atoms. So their magic derives from the fact that these strings of amino acids fold themselves up into well-defined and complex three-dimensional shapes. Now, even more magically, the 3D structures are somehow encoded in the sequence of amino acids. So a complex three-dimensional pattern is thus encoded in a linear sequence. Hence, it should be possible to predict the 3D structure of a given protein directly from its amino acid sequence. And this 50-year-old problem has been called the grand challenge of biochemistry. However, progress in protein structure prediction was slow for many years. But one can also turn the problem around and ask, given a certain 3D structure, what amino acid sequences would fold up into this structure. This would enable the design of completely new proteins. And David Baker showed in 2003 that it was possible. He could design new structures that had never been seen in nature before and compute what sequences would give these structures. He could then experimentally verify that the computational predictions were correct. So this is what we now call computational protein design. And following the first breakthrough 20 years ago, David Baker has designed a multitude of new proteins with many exciting applications. Virus inhibitors, nanomaterials, protein switches, and sensors, just to mention a few. Now, the reverse problem of predicting the three-dimensional structure directly from the amino acid sequence, it had to wait until the year 2020 for the real breakthrough. And this was when Demis Hassabis and John Jumper and their co-workers had developed the now famous AlphaFold 2 computer program. It basically cracked the code. AlphaFold is an ingenious piece of neural network engineering that showed unsurpassed performance in protein structure prediction. And utilizing the vast amounts of experimental data stored in structure and sequence databases, the network is trained to discover correlations and patterns among amino acid sequences. This enables it to produce astonishingly accurate structural models directly from the sequences. It's really no exaggeration to say that AlphaFold has caused a revolution in structural biochemistry. David Baker, Demis Hassabis, and John Jumper, your groundbreaking work in computational protein design and protein structure prediction has revolutionized these fields. It has opened up completely new possibilities to design proteins that have never been seen before, and we now have access to predicted structures of all 200 million known proteins. These are truly great achievements. On behalf of the Royal Swedish Academy of Sciences, I wish to convey to you our warmest congratulations. May I now ask you to step forward and receive your Nobel Prizes from the hands of His Majesty the King.
Johan Åkvist, Nobelkommittén för kemi där alltså. Först ut, David Baker, född i Seattle, Washington. När David Baker ska beskriva sig själv, ja, då gör han det med en mening. Jag kan inte sitta still. Demis Hassabis, född i London, underbarn i schack och nådde mästerskapsnivå redan vid 13 års ålder. Så John Jumper, född i Little Rock, Arkansas. Jumper och Hassabis, de delar på halva priset för deras arbete med proteinstrukturprediktion. Nu blir det musik, notturno för stråkar och harpa av Arnold Schönberg. Musik av Arnold Schönberg alltså. Nu har turen kommit till Nobelpriset i medicin eller fysiologi. Vi ska lyssna till Rickard Sandberg.
Your Majesties, Your Royal Highnesses, esteemed Nobel Prize laureates, ladies and gentlemen. For a moment, I invite you to look around this majestic hall. Imagine that we are not in a concert hall, but inside a human cell. Look at the wonderful orchestra behind me, representing our genetic information, our DNA. Now let each musician with their respective instrument correspond to a single gene. In a real cell, however, there are about 20,000 such performing genes, each playing a tone and rhythm for different cellular traits and functions. For an orchestra of this magnitude, effective conducting is naturally very important. For decades, it was known that proteins called transcription factors were conductors needed to guide the cellular symphony by amplifying or dampening the performing genes. This year's Nobel Prize in Physiology or Medicine is about the surprising discovery of a novel type of conductors called microRNAs that provide additional and crucial guidance over the cellular orchestra. MicroRNAs are conductors with a special ability. Instead of passionately making gestures to either amplify or dampen music intensity, microRNAs tell musicians only when to quiet down or take a break. You there, play softer. You take a break. Victor Ambros and Gary Ruvkin investigated how genes control organ development in a 1 millimeter long worm. More than a decade of persistent research led them to discover the first microRNAs and to discover how microRNAs control gene activity. MicroRNAs bind messenger RNA, the intermediate carrier of genetic information from the DNA to protein production, thereby reducing protein or messenger RNA amounts. Their groundbreaking discovery in a small worm had major implications for humans and all multicellular life. MicroRNA genes were soon found across animals and plants, and even in certain viruses. In fact, animal microRNAs arose around 600 million years ago when cells organized into more complex life forms, and microRNAs expanded in numbers in their genomes. The human genome contains around 1,000 microRNAs that control the activity of other genes through embryonic development and in adulthood. You there, play softer. You take a break. The laureates are excellent examples of how curiosity-driven basic research, exploring fundamental questions about cellular and organismal function, can advance our understanding of physiology and medicine in ways that couldn't have been predicted. Basic research is the driver of biomedical knowledge. Thanks to the groundbreaking discovery and research performed by Ambros and Ruvkin, a highly unexpected yet crucial layer of gene regulation was uncovered that is essential for complex multicellular life. The microRNAs regulate the activity of other genes to keep us alive and thriving. The laureates have revealed that sometimes the most beautiful cellular music comes not just from knowing when to play, but knowing when to be quiet. Dear Professors Ambros and Ruvkin, On behalf of the Nobel Assembly at the Karolinska Institutet, it is my great honor to convey to you our warmest congratulations. And I invite you now to step forward to receive the Nobel Prize from the hands of His Majesty the King.
Först ut Victor Ambrose, Hanover, New Hampshire. De båda herrarna gjorde upptäckterna var för sig men kom i kontakt med varandra och kunde då jämföra sina fynd i början av 1990-talet. Och här är vi idag, Gary Ruvkin. Och de är också väldigt nära vänner idag, inte bara forskarkollegor. Nu blir det musik. Det kom ett brev. Solist Ingela Brimberg. Det kom ett brev och från brev till böcker. Vi ska ta oss 762 mil österut, Sydkorea. Nobelpriset i litteratur.
Ärade pristagare, mina damer och herrar. Två färger möts i Han Kangs författarskap, vitt och rött. Det vita är snön som faller i så många av hennes böcker. Den drar en skyddande ridå mellan berättaren och världen. Men vitt är också sorgens färg och dödens. Rött står för livet, men också för smärtan, blodet, knivens djupa snitt. Textens röst är stundtals förledande mjuk, men den talar om obeskrivlig grymhet, om ohjälplig förlust. Blodet från kropparna som travats i högar efter massakern rinner, mörknar, blir till en uppfordran. En fråga som texten inte kan besvara, men inte heller ignorera. Hur ska vi förhålla oss till de döda, de bortförda och försvunna? Vad kan vi göra för dem? Vad är vi skyldiga dem? Det vita och det röda symboliserar en historisk erfarenhet som Han Kang återkommer till i sina romaner. I Jag tar inte farväl från 2021 skapar snön ett rum där mötet kan ske mellan levande och döda och de som svävande mittemellan ännu inte bestämt sig för vilken kategori de tillhör. Hela denna roman utspelar sig inuti ett snöfall där berättarjaget lägger pussel med sina minnesbilder samtidigt som hon rör sig motståndslöst genom tidsskikten och umgås med de dödas skuggor och tar del av deras kunskap. För det handlar ytterst alltid om kunskap. Att söka sanningen också när den är omöjlig att stå ut med. Med utsökt konkretion kan hennes väninna, trots att hennes fysiska kropp befinner sig i en sjukhussäng många mil därifrån, plocka fram en arkivlåda ur en hylla och leta upp ett dokument som fogar ännu en bit till den historiska mosaiken. Drömmen spiller över i verkligheten. Det förflutna i nuet. Ständigt sker hos Han Kang dessa förskjutningar där gränserna löses upp och i osäkrade tillstånd rör sig människorna med sina känselspröt riktade åt båda hållen, beredda att uppfatta signalerna och tolka dem. Kanske bryts de ner av detta seende och vittnande som alltid sker till priset av den egna sinnesron. Ändå fortsätter de med den styrka som krävs. Glömska är aldrig målet. Vem dödade mig? Frågar den mördade pojkens själ, medan de ansiktsdrag som definierade honom i livet löses upp och försvinner. För den som överlevt är frågan en annan. Hur ska jag leva vidare med den här kroppen som bara varit mig till plåga? Hur kan jag återfå den kropp som tortyren förvandlade till enbart ett blödande ting? Men när kroppen ger upp fortsätter själen att tala. När själen tröttnar fortsätter kroppen att gå. Längst där inne finns ett segt motstånd, ett stillsamt insisterande som är starkare än ord. Kravet på att minnas. Återigen, glömska är aldrig det som söks och är heller inte möjligt. Han Kangs människor är sårade, bräckliga, i någon mening svaga, men de har ändå just så mycket styrka och just den sorts styrka som behövs för att ta ännu ett steg och ställa ännu en fråga, begära ut ännu ett dokument, göra ännu en intervju med ett överlevande vittne. När ljuset sjunker fortsätter de dödas skuggor ändå att röra sig på väggen. Ingenting går någonsin över. Ingenting tar någonsin slut. Dear Han Kang, on behalf of the Swedish Academy, it is my privilege to convey to you our warmest congratulations on the Nobel Prize in Literature 2024. May I now please ask you to step forward and receive your prize from His Majesty the King.
Ellen Mattsson, Nobelkommittén för litteratur. Och vid sidan av sitt författarskap har hon även arbetat som lärare i kreativt skrivande vid Seouls konstuniversitet. Nu blir det musik från England och av Ruth Gibbs. vi framme vid Sveriges riksbanks pris i ekonomisk vetenskap till Alfred Nobels minne.
Your Majesties, Your Royal Highnesses, esteemed laureates, ladies and gentlemen. Not long ago, Sweden was a poor country, run with societal institutions only benefiting a narrow elite. Today, however, Sweden is one of the few lucky countries in the world enjoying both inclusive institutions and economic prosperity. Sweden has it all. So, if you come from a country like Sweden, you may think it obvious that institutions cause growth. But because we have it all, this is actually far from obvious. How can we be so sure it's not the other way around? That we can afford these inclusive institutions because of our economic prosperity? Or maybe, by some strike of luck in the distant past, some other underlying factor gave us both the institutions and our prosperity. In a very innovative move, this year's laureates solved this empirical conundrum by studying a huge intervention in human history, the colonization by the Europeans of large parts of the world, starting in the 16th century. By creatively using historical data on how vastly different the institutions were that emanated from this colonial experience, they were able to provide solid evidence for a causal effect of institutions on growth. But their contribution was not only empirical. Through a series of original game theoretical models, they were also able to explain why institutions are so difficult to change. And these insights, as it happens, actually apply directly to the case of Sweden. Not far from here, in December 1918, the Swedish Parliament, on a late December night, about as cold as this one, passed an important government bill to secure both female and equal suffrage for the Swedish population. This particular decision can be seen as the eclipse of a series of reforms of both the political and economic institutions of Sweden. But the decision didn't come lightly. The conservatives, whose economic benefits were on the line, fought hard against it. In the end, on that cold December night, they accepted defeat. Why did they? The short answer is to thwart an imminent threat of revolution. The political situation in Stockholm at this time was tense as a bowstring. The year before had seen the Russian Revolution. Also in neighboring Finland, a civil war was raging. And then in early November 1918, the abdication of the German emperor sent shockwaves throughout the continent that also reached the Swedish capital. At this moment, the Swedish military conscripts were effectively disarmed, and an armored boat with a loyal crew moored in the waters close to the Swedish Parliament building. Yet, the conservatives understood a crucial thing. They couldn't sweet-talk themselves out of this situation. Simply promising future welfare reforms for the material benefit of the general population wouldn't do the trick, because everyone understood that come the day when the situation had calmed down, such promises could easily be broken. Thus, the only way to appease the masses was to relinquish power itself by extending the franchise. The more general significance of this so-called commitment problems has also been highlighted by the laureates. And it helps us understand not only why institutions are so persistent, but also why they sometimes, as in Sweden in 19, change. Professors Acemoglu, Johnson, and Robinson. These contributions are also of practical importance because the huge and persistent income gap between the poorest and richest countries in the world has enormous consequences for billions of people living in the world today. And your work shows that promoting democracy and inclusive institutions is an important way forward for closing this gap. So, it is my honor and my privilege to convey to you, on behalf of the Royal Swedish Academy of Sciences, our deepest and warmly felt congratulations. Now, please step forward and accept the prize from His Majesty the King.
Först ut då Jaron Acemoglu, född i Istanbul i Turkiet. Simon Johnson, chefsekonom, Internationella valutafonden mellan 2007-2008. Och så James Robinson, 64 år, brittisk-amerikansk nationalekonom och statsvetare. Och som vi hörde John Theorell säga, de får priset för studier i hur institutioner formas och påverkar välstånd. Ekonomipriset instiftades ju i samband med Riksbankens 300-årsjubileum. Kungafamiljen lämnat och ceremonin är till ända. Men vi är inte klara än. Jag ska ge mig ut på en kort promenad och ta mig upp på scenen för att få med en pratstund med eminenta gäster som ska ge oss lite mer förståelse för det som prisats idag. Under tiden jag förflyttar mig så får ni träffa Anna Sjöström-Douagy, vd Nobelstiftelsen. Jag träffade henne häromdagen och vi pratade om Nobelpristagarna och deras arbete och om det går att hitta en röd tråd i det som hyllas i år.